VikesNow. We are here today after the first round of the NFL draft, which was kind of electric and ridiculous is a word that for sure comes to mind. I am here with some regulars, Tyler and Josh. Dustin is not here today, so I guess I'll be Dustin Baneker for this recording of Vikes Now. We're going to go over a couple things today, reactions from last night, as well as we'll probably look ahead a little bit onto tonight with round 2 and 3, which not sure how active the Vikings are going to be in that realm, but I think they seriously they might not have a choice in being active tonight. I don't know how it's going to happen. But gentlemen, how are we doing today?
I'm over the moon, man. I mean, last night went about as well as, at least in my opinion, it possibly could have. Didn't give up 23, didn't give up 2025 first, still got a quarterback, still got another really good defender. I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, last night for me was really insane. I'll divulge more into it later, but I don't think I've had such a extreme reaction to a draft before, both good and bad.
You kind of went through the 5 stages of grief there for a bit.
I did. I did. Anyone who saw my Twitter, I think I lost 10 followers because I was just rage tweeting and I had to delete everything. Excited to talk Vikings ball.
Well, yeah. Sorry you're not getting your Elon check is going to be a little lighter this month with losing the 10 followers, but
I don't even pay for that anymore, so no check for me.
I'm the shill. I'm the corporate shill here. Okay. So we'll get the obvious one out of the way. It was looking a lot like Drake May was going to be the quarterback up until, I guess, the last minute yesterday. So we kind of went into everything thinking it's going to take 3 or 4 first-round picks to get May. Then we went this entire time like, okay, if May falls through, it's going to take 2 first-rounders to go get McCarthy. Turns out, Kwesi, I don't know if he saw the vision, the giant smoke like we were talking pre-show. JJ he falls to 10. Minnesota trades up with the Jets. I think they sent a 4th and 5th round pick, which if JJ McCarthy's good, draft picks do not, those picks do not matter. How are we feeling? I guess we'll start with you, Josh. How are we feeling about McCarthy falling to 10 right into our laps and we don't have to send anything really for the future?
Yeah, I mean, like I said right off the bat, I don't think this could really have gone all that much better for the Vikings. Obviously, Drake May, I think, is still a better player, especially immediately heading into 2024. But I mean, considering the Vikings would have had to give up so much to get up to number 3, possibly 3, maybe even 4 first-round picks to do that, which is just, it's a lot. It's a lot. And the fact that they were able to sit back, just watch JJ McCarthy fall down the board, and then, like you said, go trade a 4th and a 5th, which at the end of the day probably isn't going to matter all that much, and still get a quarterback who at the very least can be a developmental guy, maybe not starting right away in 2024, but that's okay. The Vikings don't need him to start in 2024. They're looking ahead to 2025. That was probably the plan ever since Kirk Cousins and Danielle Hunter walked in free agency. So I really don't think that it could have gone much better. I thought JJ McCarthy was going to be a top 5 pick. That's what I had the Vikings trading up with the LA Chargers to get him. And the fact that they got him at 10 it's great in my book.
Oh yeah, for sure. What are your thoughts, Tyler? You kind of foreshadowed your thoughts, but I'll let you kind of have a soapbox here.
Well, let's start with the good. Is that Kwesi was able to call out the Giants' bluff. They draft Neighbors. McCarthy falls down to 10, and you're able to move up 1 spot to get him and not give up much in the process. I mean, the fall off between like a JJ McCarthy and a Bo Nix is pretty significant. So they were at least able to get one of the top 5 quarterbacks. So from a value standpoint, it's great, right? You know, we look at the draft and we say, hey, you know, we got good value for this player relative to ADP, but that's not really the entire story, because I personally sort of question the process a little bit, mainly because it sounds like the Vikings wanted to get May at all costs. There was some reporting from The Athletic last night in an Alec Lewis article that they basically offered 3 firsts, a 2nd, and a 3rd just to move up to 3 to get May. Like, you hire Josh McCown because A, he's a good quarterback developer, but B, he also has that connection to May. We were hearing about, 48 hours before the draft that all signs were pointing to Minnesota, right? So like
Nice.
what happened? I I tend to think that New England just ownership said we're taking quarterback here and we're not even going to entertain trading back because there's no guarantee that we're going to, find a better quarterback in the future than May. Next year's class isn't great and no guarantee that they pick top 3 either. So, you know, I think the Vikings were a little bit blindsided, but even then, after the Patriots took May, they still probably were looking at, okay, we can get, Michael Penix, we can get McCarthy. Like if Penix falls to 23, if he's still there, we can get him. Maybe we can get Byron Murphy at 11. And then Atlanta just kind of shocks everyone. They take Penix at 8, and I think that's when things spiraled out of control. Once the Falcons took Penix, it's like, okay, now we have to get McCarthy because there's a significant drop off after. We do not want to end up with Bo Nix and then have to try and sell that to the fan base who's, so hyped up on May, so hyped up on McCarthy to try and sell Bo Nix to the Vikings wouldn't have been great. So, I mean, I think the Vikings, are content with McCarthy. They might like him a little bit. They might like Penix a little bit. But make no mistake, I think they wanted May, and it's a bit disappointing to see that they weren't able to get that done.
Yeah, and you mentioned like Kwesi maybe seeing through the giant smoke, and they end up taking Neighbors, which is probably what they should have done anyway. They made the right choice there. I think we can all somewhat agree on that. Do you think there's anything in Kwesi that saw that the Falcons would take Michael Penix Jr. number 8?
No.
I really don't. I
don't think
think
anybody did.
I think that's why the Vikings ultimately had to trade up to number 10 was because everybody saw the Falcons take Penix and like, holy shit, we have to go get our quarterback now. And I think that's the Vikings had to box out Denver and Las Vegas, who were probably trying to move up for either McCarthy or Bo Nix. So yeah. I don't think anybody really saw this coming.
No, yeah, and we can, I guess, get into the Michael Penix bit after we finish up with the draft picks. Thank you to Atlanta for saving my life last night. But we went into this draft thinking like, okay, they're probably not going to pick at 11 to 23. Spoiler alert, they didn't technically, but they still did pick twice. The line of thinking was you're getting a quarterback, you're trading up for a quarterback. They did. And the quarterback is going to be your only selection. And we're assuming it was 3 for May or 5 for McCarthy, for example. We walk out with J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner, who Dallas Turner, I think 90% of Earth had him mocked to Minnesota before Kirk Cousins eventually ended up signing with Atlanta. So, like, I don't know how you put into words the haul that Kwesi came away with last night. I think he put a lot of, and I've been 100% a critic of Kwesi, specifically the drafting ability. But last night, like we might have 3 draft picks next year, but like the haul for last night, I don't know. So if you look at the Dallas Turner trade up, I think it ends up being, since I was the Houston pick, it was like 2 second-round picks, a 3rd, 4th, and the 5th. Tyler, I guess I'll start with you this time. Are you okay with giving up that kind of haul for? I think Dallas Turner should have gone 8th overall. Like I thought he was going to go to Atlanta. So how do you feel about it?
Short answer is yes.
Right.
And here's why: is you can't really look at the total amount of picks that Vikings sort of sacrificed to end up with Dallas Turner because they made a pre-draft trade to get 23. Mm-hmm. And that was with the intent of potentially trading up into the top 3, the top 5 to get a quarterback. So obviously what the Texans were going to demand to give up 23, knowing that the Vikings were looking at a quarterback, is a bit different. It sort of plays into your negotiations with teams when you're trying to acquire draft capital pre-draft. But I look at Dallas Turner, I just think, he's the best edge rusher in this class, and it's a really good class of edge rushers. Like, he's just super athletic. He fits the scheme well. You got him at a great value at 17. you know, and it's a premium position too. So like the Vikings walked away with, their future franchise quarterback, hopefully, and then, a legitimate replacement for Daniil Hunter. And I know we like Bernard, and I do as
Mhm.
well, but he's closer to a prime Everson Griffin, which is nothing to slouch at, but he's not like one of the most dominant edge rushers in the league. He's like a tier
Right.
below that. He is very, very, very good. And when you're going to pair him with Dallas Turner and you still have Van Ginkel as your third rusher and Jahad Ward as your fourth, like Brian Flores is going to have a ton of flexibility to really sub out edge rushers as needed. And I'm really excited to watch that. So I have
Yeah.
no problems with the Turner pick. I I think it's a bit unfair to look at the totality of picks that was given up given the initial circumstances. You can't really take it out of context.
For sure.
So, but no, I'm a huge fan of that pick.
Yeah, the trade chart value nerds are really going off the rails with the Dallas Turner trade up. But yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned you said Van Ginkel as the third. That's something I was gonna mention too, was that we're kind of like, oh, where's Dallas Turner gonna fit with Grenard and Van Ginkel? Like Turner will probably start over Van Ginkel, to be honest. I don't know if it'll be week 1, but it'll be soon. And
It'll
then
be
Van
week one.
Ginkel, yeah, Van Ginkel's
So
already 30. So like
to
it's a long-term
Yeah.
move.
to interject here, I do write for the Dolphins, so
Yeah,
obligatory
yeah,
mention.
yeah.
So I did watch quite a bit of Van Ginkel, and he is like obviously Vikings fans are gonna love him. Like, long, blonde hair, super hardworking guy, can do a lot of things really well.
Sneaky athletic.
Yeah, all the
Yeah.
lunch pail, first one in, last one out. But that aside, if I'm being honest, he wasn't the second edge rusher in Miami either. He was best suited
Right.
as a really, really, really high end edge rusher who would probably be a number 2 on most teams, like a starting edge rusher on most teams. But they had Jalen Phillips and Bradley Chubb, so like
Hmm.
you
And he
know,
stepped in for Jalen Phillips, right? Because Phillips went
yeah,
down.
and he
Yeah.
and he
Yep.
played very well. It's not like he's a scheme only guy. It's not like he's a guy like a Fadi Adenabo who just was sort of the beneficiary of talent around him. Like he is a
Mm,
very solid player in his own right,
forgot about
but
that guy.
he doesn't really have the upside to be like a legitimate every down number 2 at a high level. Like that's
Yeah.
Bernard.
Hmm.
Bernard is your high end 2. Van Ginkel is your high end 3. And Dallas Turner is someone you hope can be a high end 1.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And so, Josh, what's your thoughts on the whole situation with Dallas Turner?
Yeah, I think ultimately you obviously value in trades is important, but I also think you have to look at the value of the position and the name that the Vikings
Yeah.
were able to get with that trade. And I think landing Dallas Turner at number 17 is tremendous value. It's like 10 picks lower than most people had him mocked going into the draft. So kudos to Kwesi there for being able to get that guy. And not only that, but I think the fit alongside Grenard and Van Ginkel is awesome because Grenard, you can trust him to pass rush and play run defense. Van Ginkel, he's going to do a little bit of everything in terms of pass rush, run stopping, pass coverage sometimes. So you can really just pin Dallas Turner's ears back, especially for these first couple of years, and just let him go after a quarterback. You don't have to have him be like your number 1 run stopping edge. You don't have to have him step back in coverage all the time. You can just have him go after the quarterback, which Brian Flores is going to love. And I think he's going to fit tremendously in the system.
Yeah, and again, the trade up, it is kind of unfair to kind of look at it from that grand scheme, but just thinking of where the Vikings got from it, like Latu was the first defensive player off the board, right? At like 15 or 16.
Seahawks. Yeah. Or no,
So
not Seahawks. Somebody else. I don't remember.
I don't
was
know.
it
Yeah.
the
Was it
Colts?
Indy? I think it was
Yep,
Indy.
that's right. It was Indy. And
Yeah.
then Byron Murphy went to Seattle.
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh man,
That one
hurt.
upset me. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
That would have been
Oh,
nice.
Hmm. No, yeah, no, they get their and I'm sure Dallas Turner was probably their guy from the jump. But they trade up right before that run. Well, not before, but like right as that run on defensive players was starting to go. And they're able to get Dallas Turner out of it. When that trade happened, at first, like I'm pretty sure we were all shocked. I was standing in my kitchen and I can see my TV in my living room, and I saw the Jaguars trade, and I was like, "Oh, that's." And then we come up, and I was like, "Oh." Did you guys think it would? Because I thought the first name I thought was Dallas Turner. So are you guys? You thought it was Dallas Turner too, or
I I thought it was honestly going to be Johnny Newton, but
okay?
apparently the NFL just doesn't like Johnny Newton because he fell out of the
Yeah,
first round entirely. But Dallas Turner was definitely up there for me. I personally would have liked Newton just because he's a defensive tackle and the Vikings desperately need that, especially in terms of a pass rusher. But I'm I'm over the moon about Dallas Turner going to the Vikings, so I'm okay with it.
yeah,
Yeah, I think for me the three names when I saw that, well, first of all, I was completely dumb and unable to process anything in my TV and completely lost track of who went where after we picked McCarthy.
yep.
Which, but no, my three initial players I thought it would be were either Turner, Verse, or Newton. Like those were probably the three.
Hmm.
And I think I've heard that like Newton just wasn't like a scheme fit for the Vikings. I don't
Yeah,
think
yeah,
it has anything to do with the player. I will say though, getting an edge in round one is probably a lot better than, you know, interior defensive lineman, despite the huge hole we have, right?
yep.
Like I think it's easier to find a guy in like the fourth round who can be a starting caliber, like run stuffing at the very least, interior defensive lineman than it is to find a Daniil Hunter replacement in round four. And plus
No, for
positional
sure.
value. So like edge rushers just cost more than interior
Yeah.
defensive linemen.
And buzzwords you just said there, but again, that's why these trade ups are okay because they took, I think, the two most premium positions in football with those two
Exactly.
picks.
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I
it's hard
mean,
to argue.
you look down the board, Devondre Sweat's going to be there, maybe.
Yeah,
Christian Boyd. There's still a chance in the fourth round you go get another defensive tackle who can maybe not be his starter right away, but at least a really decent guy and developmental piece. So, I mean, at the end of the day, they definitely still could go get a defensive tackle at some point.
oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think just to throw my names out there, I thought it was like, so Dallas Turner was the first name, and then no corners had been drafted yet. So I thought maybe they're trying to get ahead of that. I thought it was maybe Arnold or Kenyon Mitchell.
Yep.
But I don't think the first corner went off the board till like 22. And again, I just keep thinking of things that make the trade ups good. Or the trades up, I guess. No, trade ups. Like Verse, and I think there's two edges taken after like right after we took Turner, Verse, and I'm blanking on the other
Chop
Chop.
Robinson.
Chop,
Yeah.
right? But yeah, so again, getting ahead of it. I just think they're two great moves by Quasey. Going into something else, not so great move. Josh, you had some theories. We kind of foreshadowed the Michael Penix Jr. selection and how this could have affected the Vikings taking McCarthy. For my coping, I like to say McCarthy was the guy the whole way. Quasey's the smartest man on earth, and he knew they were taking Penix. Probably not what happened, but what are a couple of these theories you have on Michael Penix Jr. going to the ATL?
Yeah, I mean, you say not a great move, but I think it's a great move for the Vikings, at least. I mean,
Oh yeah,
yeah, thank God. Thank God the Falcons bailed us out again. First, they take
yeah.
Kirk Cousins off our hands and let us go get
Hmm.
a quarterback, and then they take Michael Penix instead of JJ McCarthy. I mean, I think Penix is a solid player, but at the end of the day, it really doesn't make a ton of sense for Atlanta to go get a quarterback after signing another one to $100 million guaranteed contract over 4 years.
Yep.
But I think if we're gonna rationalize it a little bit, first off, you don't know what's gonna happen with Kirk Cousins and his Achilles. He's 36 years old. It's like what 6 months removed from that injury, so maybe he's just not ready to go week one. And Michael Penix is their backup plan in case that happens. But also, who knows what happens with this tampering thing? Maybe they don't have a first round pick next year and they're just trying to get ahead of that. And I mean, next year would probably be a good time to start looking at your quarterback replacement. I think they can get out of Cousins deals after 2 years, something like that.
Yep.
So
Yep.
at the end of the day, I mean, if Cousins does fall off a cliff a little bit going into his late 30s, they definitely have to start thinking about the future of that position. So I think those are the two main things. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, Penix is a 24-year-old rookie. He's going to be 26 by the time he even steps on an NFL field. I think JJ McCarthy makes a hell of a lot more sense there if
Yeah,
you're going to
I don't.
develop a guy than Michael Penix does. I just ultimately I get the idea behind the pick, but the process was questionable at best for me.
No, for sure. Tyler, you got anything on it?
Yeah, questionable is a very generous word to use to
Insane,
describe
maybe.
the process.
Stupid.
Yeah.
What do the Falcons know that we don't? Like, how is Kirk's recovery going? Number one, and number two, is the tampering thing going to kick in 2025? Was Rich McKay, who's I think on some sort of committee? I don't even know what the committee's called. It doesn't matter too much, but Rich McKay had some sort of influence, I think, on when they lose that pick, and maybe even Philly to an extent. But I wonder if they took Penix now, knowing that they wouldn't have a 2025 first, or if that was their mindset. But like he's already, how old is he? What, like 24? You said.
Yeah.
So like. When the Packers took Love, at least he was really young. At least he was really toolsy. He had a lot of upside. Penix is sort of what you see is what you get, almost.
Right.
So I really don't understand it for them, and I also think it's really fucking hilarious. Like Kirk Cousins' agent leaking to the media that he was beyond shocked and he is not happy is like. It is just like music to my ears, and I don't hate Kirk at all. I love him as a person, but like at least the Vikings were honest with him. We were like,
Right.
look, we like you, we want to keep you for the next year or two, but make no mistake about it, we're gonna draft a quarterback because you're 36 years old coming off a torn Achilles. It from a team building standpoint, it makes too much sense. And Kirk is like, well, Atlanta's recruiting me because they think I'm going to be the unquestioned starter, and then they turn around and backstab him. Like, and Kirk's got the most powerful agents in sports, arguably, or at least in football, it seems like, because I mean, what he and McCarthy have done is insane. So, like, next time they get to the negotiating table with Atlanta, I don't think he would stay.
No, yeah. What was the report? This isn't a quarterback and organization relationship breaking down. This is cheating on your wife during the honeymoon.
Honestly,
it was so perfect because that pick just made no sense. And Josh, you said it best. Like, if you're gonna, the worst thing you can do is take a quarterback there, and then you take Penix and not McCarthy. Throw the talent out the window and what you think they are. Like, McCarthy is legitimately 3-4 years younger than Penix.
Yeah.
So why are you going to take the guy that's going to be pushing 27 just by the time that you can consider having an out of the Kirk Cousins contract? And most likely this will like completely blow up in our faces, and Michael Penix Jr. is going to be a great quarterback, and Atlanta is going to be good, because it kind of feels like I think it's way worse, obviously, than the Jordan Love trade up with Green Bay a couple years ago, because we're all like, oh, why? And then now Jordan Love is like really good.
No, just to like, but even to take it back to that comparison, I mean, at the very least, Aaron Rodgers was their established starting quarterback.
Exactly.
This is like, you signed this guy a month ago, and now you're drafting his replacement already. Like, do you have faith in this guy or do you not? It doesn't really make a ton of sense in that area.
Forget the whole cheating on your wife during the honeymoon analogy. This is Diggs going between two different hotel rooms. This is that is exactly what this is.
Nice, yeah. We here at VikesNow do not endorse cheating on your wife.
Absolutely not.
we're an anti-adultery podcast. An interesting theory I actually heard on it, and this is the second time I'll be shouting him out on a show today, just because I feel like it's so relevant. Shout out to Joe Spinoza on Twitter. Love him or hate him, he's a relevant figure. Especially during this time with being the Kirk Cousins guy and him going to Atlanta. He had a really funny tweet last night that said retire at Kirk Cousins because he's so mad at the Falcons organization. Just an all-time tweet. He told me an interesting theory this morning, actually. I was talking to him, and like I guess like the best case scenario out of it for like his Kirk Cousins fandom is he pointed out, and no way am I going to say Kirk Cousins and Tom Brady are comparable quarterbacks whatsoever. That's so disrespectful to Kirk Cousins. When the Patriots drafted Jimmy Garoppolo, that seemed to reignite or ignite some kind of new fire under Tom Brady. Obviously, that Jimmy Garoppolo is like late second round pick, I think, and like this is the 8th overall pick, so it's different for sure. But maybe Atlanta is just playing the ultimate game of chess, and they are trying to light a fire under Kirk Cousins, who very, very notably does not have that mental rip your head off kind of mentality.
Did he not have fire already? Like, is he not trying to prove himself by returning from an Achilles injury?
Well, it's Kirk Cousins. You got to kind of hold his hand, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't see like this year of him being complacent. It's not like he's in year 3 in the same team. He's on a brand new team. He's recovering from a torn Achilles. Like, he had plenty of motivation already. It's like, would you need to give Adrian Peterson even more motivation after he tore his ACL?
Right.
No. Like, you're already trying to prove yourself. That's just copium to think that, oh, the reason that the Falcons drafted Penix was to motivate Kirk.
Yeah.
Like,
no, for sure.
And Kirk is such a hard worker too. It's disrespectful to Kirk to
Except on
like
Tuesdays.
insinuate that like
right.
we needed to light a fire under his ass because he's not working hard enough. Oh, he doesn't work on Tuesdays, eh? So like,
yeah, just a theory, I get, like just like the best possible outcome, I guess, for the really big pool of Kirk Cousins super fans out there. If you are one of those, because there's so many. So I guess that kind of covers, I think we would all agree that's probably the biggest overpay of the first round, unless you guys all had a name or two you wanted to mention also. Like, I think Brock Bauer, not an overpay, but just like a weird pick to the Raiders. I don't hate it.
I like it.
I kind of do too. Because I think Mayer at the very least is a better blocker, and that just kind of allows Bowers to just be more of the receiver threat that he was throughout his entire Georgia career, and not have to worry about blocking as much. So I don't love the pick for them, because I think they have a lot of other needs that they should have filled other than tight end, especially at 13th overall. But I do think that it's at least a decent pick, and I think he's going to be a really good player. So I can't hate it.
For sure.
Here's the thing with the Raiders is that, like, last year it felt like their offense was so heliocentric around Devontae Adams, at least in the passing game. It was him and Josh Jacobs, and that's pretty much it. You get Bowers, and you're giving Aiden O'Connell or Gardner Minshew another weapon to throw to. And when you have like a low end quarterback, that is not a bad thing at all to do. That is exactly the right thing you should be doing, which is, hey, we've got Gardner Minshew. He isn't the greatest, but we're gonna at least try to surround him with talent. That's a smart thing. I thought they would go defense. I thought that was a Dallas Turner spot. I thought that was a Jared Verse spot, because you signed however many hundreds of millions of dollars to for Christian Wilkins. You give Max Crosby another edge rusher beside him, because I don't know if Tyree Wilson's going to work out. So
it doesn't look like it.
So yeah, I mean, I don't hate the pick. It's kind of a weird landing spot, but I mean, Waller did good for them for so long. So we'll see. I do have a steal and a reach here. My steal is Quinion Mitchell, 22 to Philly.
Yeah,
like that first corner off the board, 22 to Philly. Quinion Mitchell. That, I mean, Howie's always nailing these drafts, and this year was no different. It wasn't as flashy as like the Jalen Carter pick, but it's still a really solid pick. And then my reach is Darius Robinson to 27 in Arizona. I don't understand that.
Wow.
Yeah,
I love Darius Robinson.
Yeah,
but in the first round, he feels like a second round guy to me. I feel like there were better edge prospects that you could have taken.
I mean, in terms of a pure edge, you could definitely argue that. I just think Robinson can play absolutely everywhere on the defensive line. Like you have a need on the defensive line, plug in Darius Robinson, he's going to fix it for you. So that's kind of why I have him as a first round pick, not necessarily because of his talent as an edge, but just as an overall defender. It's
one of those like Seattle kind of picks. I'm not sure if they still have that GM, but like it felt like every year for a while, Seattle would, overdraft a player at least a little bit compared to consensus, because he was like, the coaches felt like he fit the defense perfectly, like a Jordan Brooks or something, you know. Not to say that necessarily worked out, but Arizona is showing tendency to do that. Like Gannon is going to get guys that Gannon absolutely loves, and he's not going to care if it's a slight reach.
Yeah, for sure. And that was a good segue into the I guess underpay or steal of the draft. Josh, who did you have that you liked the I guess the value of the pick?
I hate to steal Tyler's, but mine was also Quinyon Mitchell going to
Yeah,
Philly.
yeah.
Just because, like Tyler said, CB1 going off the board at 22. That's probably one of the lowest spots that a CB1's ever gone off the board. And Quinyon Mitchell's a damn good cornerback, and Philly absolutely had a need at that position after what happened last year down the stretch. They're aging at that group, and Mitchell comes in and he's a plug and play option right away.
No, for sure. And yeah, like Ken Mitchell came to my mind, like Detroit landing Terrion Arnold at 24. I wasn't as high on Arnold as other people were, but it feels like every year, and I think I kind of one of my predictions is like one of these corners is going to go way earlier than everyone thinks. Like again, Atlanta, I thought was a spot that Terrion Arnold could go off the board, but they make an even stupider pick. But we've talked about that pick enough. Thank you, Atlanta, for letting me wake up this morning. But yeah, so essentially, segueing into Terrion Arnold. I also liked. I wanted to mention the Buffalo trades. I think were very, very good. I think Buffalo is one of the winners of the first round just because I like the value they recoup trading down twice. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's interesting for them just because obviously everybody's thinking wide receiver, but at the end of the day, if Brandon Ayuk or Deebo Samuel is available and you want to just package some picks to go get one of those two guys, I say do that rather than taking a shot at a guy late in the first round. You know, if you've got established receiver talent, then why take a risk on a guy? And I think that's ultimately what they're going to end up doing. If they don't end up doing that, though, they might be in some trouble.
Yeah.
I don't even think Buffalo can afford to trade for like an Ayuk or a Higgins or a Cortland. Maybe they could afford Cortland Sutton. I don't know how low the market is on him, but I do like the trade down. What I'm actually kind of confused with, and this might be going against the grain here, I'm not a huge Xavier Worthy guy. I understand why the Chiefs picked him because of the whole Tyreek Hill thing, but at the same time, their offense doesn't lack speedsters. Like they've got McCole Hardman. They've got do they still have MVS? I'm not sure, but it seemed like last year they had a bunch of these really toolsy receivers, but not a single Cooper Kupp type. Just outside of Rashee Rice, who it's just like, okay, I'm going to throw the ball at this receiver, and I'm confident this guy's just going to catch the ball.
Yeah.
Catch the ball.
Rashee Rice is pretty fast too, I've heard.
Yeah. Lad McConkey for them would have made more sense. Because I mean, Mahomes just needs a reliable pass catcher, not the one that's going to, outrun you. And I'm not sure if Worthy is the most reliable route runner, the most reliable hands catcher that they could have taken with that pick. I like that Buffalo traded down because, I mean, this is a really deep receiving class, and Roman Wilson in Buffalo could be really interesting if that happens.
That'd be interesting.
Lad McConkey in Buffalo could be really interesting. There are some guys left still that could be really solid for them. Maybe not star level players, but really solid receivers where they're not going to complain if they're not getting targeted 15 times a game like Diggs. But
yeah, Buffalo, I think, has a lot more holes than people realize. I don't know if it's just the Josh Allen factor of oh, he's sick. That's fine. But even more than Diggs leaving, Gabe Davis, I'm going to try to keep it short. Gabe Davis sucks. Sorry. I knew whatever team gave him a contract this offseason would be a massive overpay just because he was so volatile. He would go literally 4 games with 75 to 100 total yards and then have 150-yard game. It's kind of like KJ Osborne in a way. But I think they needed receiver badly before Diggs left. So adding him a lad tonight with McConkey? Yeah, I tried to call him McConkey. I don't know why. But yeah, I think Buffalo's first on the board tonight in the second round. But yeah, I guess I'll start with you, Josh. Do you think there's anything that the Vikings can do tonight, like as far as getting a pick?
I I think there is a way for them to do it. I don't necessarily know if they should. I mean, if you look at what they've got
Yeah.
left, they've got 108, which is 8 picks away from being a third rounder, so you could package that theoretically and maybe a player like Andrew Booth, Lewis Seen, something like that, just to get up. I don't know if anybody even going to touch Lewis Seen, but I mean,
Mm,
hypothetically, maybe. Before the draft, I this is going to be controversial, maybe, but I was thinking maybe they swing a Brian O'Neill trade just to get off of that contract. But now that they've only got 3 offensive tackles, I don't think that's a realistic option either, especially if you're going to need a guy to start right away. So before they ended up making that trade with Houston to go get that other first rounder and get their quarterback and everything, I thought that maybe was an option to get back into day 2, but I think the best case is maybe package 108 and something else and get back up there. But at the end of the day, I don't necessarily know if that's the right option either.
yeah. Just because you can doesn't mean you should, I think is the best way we can put that.
Yeah.
Tyler, what are your thoughts?
I'd agree with Josh. I think the two biggest pressing needs for the Vikings are interior defensive linemen and interior offensive linemen. I think just given how a league values those positions, you're going to find a quality player early in round 4. I don't think you necessarily need to move up into the second or third round unless you absolutely fell in love with a player. And even if you did, like the Vikings don't have the capital to move up into the second round at all. Like they would have to trade the entire draft away this year, like all those 6, all those 7s. And like if I'm in the second round, I'm not trading my second round pick for a bunch of day 3. Like, no. I
Yeah.
mean, maybe late day 3, if they want to like trade back in, they could maybe do that, but I don't think they would. Not for an interior defensive lineman or like a guard. I think they sweat it out and they'll have like what 4 or 5 picks left because they have what 2
Yeah.
7s now, 2 6
5.
and a 4.
They've got a 4, 2, 6, and 2 sevens. Yeah.
Yeah, so they still have 5
Yeah.
picks, and you're looking at maybe one more rotational guy with that 4th rounder, and then a bunch of depth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're looking at here. I think they go defensive tackle with that 4th rounder.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I mean, you're looking at Bullard and Tillery in a rotation with like. It's just that's where the biggest need is. That's where someone could make an immediate impact just due to the lack of talent, on the defensive line. And then you're looking at Brandel starting at left guard because some 6th rounder is not going to win a starting job before week 1, even if you draft a guard. So, where Turner and McCarthy are like the 2 biggest picks of this draft as far as like contributing right away. Probably Turner.
No, yeah. I think we can all pretty much agree on that. And touching on McCarthy, pause. I think I kind of agree with Thor, which shout out to Thor. I'm sure he's having like a great day. He DM'd me because I posted that clip of him going crazy about McCarthy over May. He DM'd me. He didn't want to retweet it because he didn't want to fight Patriots fans all day because the vibes are too high for him. But I asked him who's got it better than us, and I'm still waiting on a response. But he said that McCarthy is probably ready to play right away. While I don't really necessarily disagree with that, again, just because he can doesn't mean you should. Sit him for a year and kind of let him bake, preheat the oven, let him get to a nice golden brown. But with that, of course, we said let's max it out at 30 minutes, and we are pushing 40. So, did either of you gentlemen have any closing arguments, as Dustin likes to say, or anything you wanted to touch on that we did not previously?
Yeah. I think
I
the big
mean,
thing.
at the end of the day, you got your 2 guys.
Yeah, I think we got a little delay.
Well, we've got a delay.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you're
think I'm
good.
losing you guys.
Oh, you're
Yeah.
good. Josh, you go ahead since you're a little choppy, and then we'll get Tyler.
Okay. All right. So I think at the end of the day, you got your 2 guys in round 1 in JJ McCarthy and Dallas Turner. I I just don't think that anything else that happens through the rest of the weekend really matters all that much. As long as you fill some depth needs, I'm good with whatever happens. So yeah, it's a good day.
No, yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. What do you got, Tyler?
I'll be very curious to see how Kevin O'Connell describes the JJ McCarthy pick. Because right now it doesn't really feel like he's the franchise quarterback. I feel like he's the quarterback of the franchise.
That was a bar.
They,
I like that.
They missed out on May, and just the vibes from that first presser were. I like compare how he reacted to the Turner pick versus the McCarthy pick. He wasn't upset at the McCarthy pick, but he was very tight-lipped, very nondescript about what he brings to the team. It was all about how much he wanted to be here and like the person he is off the field and the competitor. And like I get that. That's great. We didn't hear a ton about how he's going to fit and why they were willing to spend the 10th overall pick to make him, you know, the next quarterback of this team's future. So we'll see what happens on that front. But other than that, I'm good.
Cool. Well, thank you guys for being here. Like I said, we extended that for longer than we thought, but that's cool. This is one of the funnest thing, if that's a word, one of the funnest things to talk about is this draft, and this is kind of what we live for at this point. But yeah, in case you couldn't pick up on it, don't make any big plans tonight if you're a Vikings fan thinking that you're gonna see them make any selections, and if you did, that's completely your fault and you're dumb. But with that,
if you can, try and split screen the Wolves game and the draft, and have your volume on the Wolves game. But if you see a trade pop up, you'll be ready for it.
For sure. Good point. Completely forgot to mention that the Wolves play tonight, and I thought about that before we recorded, but that's okay. 10:30 here Eastern time, which is ridiculous. But no, thank you all for watching. Thank you, Josh and Tyler, for joining me. I'm sure we will have another video up probably here tomorrow. I know me and Dustin, I believe, are talking with Alex Micheletti tomorrow night again to get his post-draft reactions. But thank you guys again. Skol.
Skol.